Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diana and the Book Hunt. It's already the end of June. Can you believe it? I think that the saying is really true. Time flies when you're having fun, specifically when you're reading good books, and it's already halfway throughout 2023. Can you believe it? I'm just totally shocked at this. At the same time, when I think about all of the books that I read in the first portion of the year, I've already read almost 130 books, which is crazy to me because I've never read so many books in this short amount of time. So it really feels like the first portion of the year has passed when I look back to how many books I've read. So yeah, I think it's a good time to kind of sit down and look back on what I've read in the first portion of the year. So I decided to again do the mid-year book freakout tag, where I'm going to answer a couple of questions regarding my reading experience of the first part of the year. And I think it's a good kind of setup to do a recap of what I've read, but also to kind of scope out in 6 months' time whether those books will still be at the top of my reading experience for the year. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and answer all of the questions. I kind of fear that I'm going to be repeating a couple of books the whole time because there's a couple that are really standout books for me, but at the same time that just will showcase how much I loved one or two books that I'm going to mention. I am going to try to throw in a couple of books in there that really also kind of made very good impressions on me, but let's just dive in. Let's just not talk about things that are theoretically or hypothetically going to happen. Let's just dive in and answer the questions. The first question is probably going to be the easiest one for me to answer. The question is, what is the best book that you've read so far in 2023? And the answer to that is The Right Move by Liz Stamford. I think that book is really a perfect book, in my opinion. I really cannot think of one single thing to say that I would have wanted to see go differently within the plot, with the characters, with the tropes, with how it was crafted, with the writing, anything. I just cannot think of anything that was wrong with that book or that I would have changed to it. So really, it's a book that I would gladly reread many times over and would still love. So it's definitely my top read at the moment of this year. I think it's going to be in the top list of almost anyone who has read this book. I really haven't heard anything bad about this book either. This is the second book. It's a standalone series, so you can read it as a standalone. You don't need to read the first one, but it's set in the same kind of world, the Windy City, I think the series is called, by Liz Stamford. The first one is Mile High, which I absolutely loved as well. But The Right Move really just did something that was really special, in my opinion. It showed a reluctant hero. It showed how a reluctant hero can show in very many ways that he's falling for our heroine, without doing grand gestures or talking the talk, just doing specific small things that show that he is gone for our heroine. We've got the fake dating trope that kind of works out very well within the plot, in my opinion. We've got forced proximity. We've got a very romantic kind of book. And our heroine is an amazing heroine as well. I loved Indy in this book. So yeah, I just love this book. I cannot gush enough about it. So this is definitely a top read for me. At the same time, I do want to mention a second, it's not a book, it's a series that kind of had me in a chokehold for a long time, and I've been thinking about these characters for a long time after I read the series. I have to mention those, and those are the Off Balance books by Lucia Franco. So we have what's the first book? We have Balance, Execution, Release, Twist, and Dismount. I'm not sure if they're in this order, but those are the 5 books within the Off Balance series by Lucia Franco, following the same couple, Ria and Kova, and it's a very much forbidden romance between a coach and athlete. Also a very big age gap between them. So yeah, it's a very toxic relationship, to be quite frank, but I just dove into that story and I could not function for like almost a week that I was reading those 5 books. I really was immersed in that world, and I would very much love to re-experience it for the first time. This is one of the few books that I wouldn't mind experiencing for the first time again, because there was just so much anxiety, so many emotions, so many different ups and downs and roller coaster emotions that you go through with this couple, that I just loved it, and it's definitely up in my tops of the year as well. So those two I really need to mention as the contenders for the best books that I've read this year. The second question is, what's the best sequel that you've read this year? So obviously The Right Move, but I just don't want to mention only that book for every single answer that I'm going to give. So I'm going to go with one more here, and that is going to be Professor Feelgood by Lisa Raven. I loved Mr. Romance, which is the first book. I gave that one 5 stars, and I do think that Mr. Romance is kind of my favorite. I'm going back and forth between the two of them, but still, I think Mr. Romance, I just prefer a little bit more to Professor Feelgood, but Professor Feelgood, I still gave 5 stars. I still love that story, and we've got a very much loaded scenario in this book. We have a second chance, but it's kind of like friends to enemies to I don't know how to call it, to kind of have to work together, to co-workers to lovers situation. And we've got just a very romantic story. Mr. Romance was very romantic as well, and this is, I think, why I fell so hard for both of these stories, because I love romantic books in general. I miss romance a lot within contemporary plots nowadays. I think that writers nowadays really focus on popular tropes to kind of get those sales, which is normal, but at the same time, it feels like romance kind of gets on the back burner because of that. And within these two stories, so Mr. Romance and Professor Feelgood, you just see how much it means to have beautifully written words that convey how much romance means for two people who have a chemistry together. Because it's not only chemistry, it's not only sexual tension, it's not only the actual sex, it's not only like that they want to be together or cannot get together or whatever the trope is within that setting, but really the pining and the longing, and them thinking about and fantasizing about these people that they've fallen in love with. It's that I'm missing oftentimes within stories, and I really love that in Professor Feelgood and Mr. Romance as well. So this is definitely one that I want to mention as a favorite sequel. Question number 3 is a new release that has released already, but you haven't picked up yet, but you definitely want to. I have to say here, Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I did purchase the ebook, but I was like, I don't want to just read the ebook. I want the physical copy so I can annotate it. I've really heard amazing things about the audiobook as well, but unfortunately I don't have Audible, and on Storytel they don't have that book, so I cannot get my hands on it just yet. But I'm going to wait out until I get my physical copy so I can annotate it, and I definitely want to read it because I suspect that it's going to be one of the top reads for me for this year. Next up, I also definitely want to read book 3 and 4 within the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver. We've got Powerless and just the recently released Reckless. I'm going to possibly pick up the ebooks for those because, again, I am not subscribed to Audible, so I won't be able to get the audiobooks for those. So it will take me a while to read them because currently I'm just so busy that I cannot read a lot of physical copies or ebooks. I mostly listen to audiobooks at the moment. But yeah, I definitely want to get to those because I just loved the first 2 books, and I've heard nothing but good things about Reckless specifically. Not so many good things about Powerless, but I still want to read that one because it's a friends to lovers situation, which I love. So yeah, those are 2 that I definitely want to get to as well. And obviously I want to read everything that Emily Henry releases. Even though I was disappointed by Booklovers, I definitely want to pick up Happy Place, which is her latest release. It's a summary read, so I definitely want to read it during summer. And I'm going to purchase the physical copy of that one, so I'm going to read it in a physical copy as well. So those 4 books actually are ones that I definitely want to get to as soon as possible. The follow-up question would be, what are my most anticipated releases for the second half of the year? Here we've got, obviously, Caught Up by Liz Stamford. It's going to come out, I believe, sometime in fall, October or November, and it's going to follow Kai, who was mentioned in The Right Move. I cannot wait for this story. I think that Liz Stamford is slowly but surely becoming one of my favorite authors, and I'm really looking forward to this book. The second one is going to be Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. It's a second chance romance, and it's one that's going to come out on audio on the 6th of July, I believe, on Storytel. So I'm definitely picking this one up, especially because I saw that Brie from In Love and Words loved this book and really recommended it on her channel. So I'm going to be picking this up as soon as it releases on audio. And then we've got Only and Forever by Chloe Lees. This is going to be the last Bergman Brothers series that focuses on Vigo. And I really cannot wait for it because I've loved all of the other Bergman Brothers books. And I just want to see the conclusion to this family's amazing dynamic and their romances. So I'm looking forward to this one as well. And I believe it's going to be coming out in the last part of the year, around November or December. So really looking forward to this one as well. Moving on to a question that I don't want to answer because I'm going to probably step on somebody's toes here, because we're going to talk about my biggest disappointments so far for the year. And there's 3 books that I know are really widely well received and even well loved, and I just did not love them as much as everyone else, and I definitely had some issues with some of them. The first one being Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is a young adult story that focuses on a teenage couple in Ireland. The girl gets bullied a lot, so she moves to a private school, and her family is not well off, while the boy, he is on the rugby team in this private school. He's immediately captivated by her, but they kind of don't get together for around 600 pages of that book, and they have a second book that is dedicated to their romance, and I could do without the 600 pages of mundane things that are going on within their lives. Obviously, it's a very emotional story because the girl, she has a lot of, Shannon, I think her name was really going through a lot in her home life, and Johnny, he had a medical problem that was the center of his issues. But really, I was so bored throughout the whole thing that I could not make myself pick up the second book, even if you kind of paid me to do it. So I just did not vibe with it. I could not understand the hype, honestly. So it's not a bad book per se. Like, there's a passenger for every train, we say here in Bulgaria. Obviously, this book is just meant for someone else. It's just not for me. So yeah, I gave this one 3 stars, and it was really one of my biggest disappointments of this year because everyone has rated this book 5 stars and has been raving about it, but I just couldn't get on board with it. The second book is A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. This book, my gosh, again, young adult, drama-filled, private school story. I just did not love it. I hated the guy in the book. He was kind of a misogynist in my opinion, and he was really working on my nerves. The girl was a prude, kind of. I don't want to be too harsh, but at the same time I don't have other words to put behind those characters, and I gave it 2 stars only because of the last couple of scenes that were kind of romantic. I cannot deny that, but at the same time the whole book was so boring for me, and I couldn't with that book, and I definitely don't get the hype behind that one either. And then the third one I'm going to mention is not specifically a book that I that I hated. I gave it 3 stars, like on the upper level, three stars. It wasn't bad, but honestly, because I've heard so many good things about this book, it's been on a favorites list of so many booktubers that I follow, specifically because there is also a language barrier that I typically love. But in this story, it just didn't work well for me. The book is called Transcendence by, what was the author's name? Shay Savage. In this story, we've got a time traveling situation where the heroine is in modern times and she time travels to like the Stone Age or something like that. I don't know which times those are, where we've got almost like a Neanderthal kind of hero who doesn't obviously know how to communicate with the heroine, and she doesn't know how to communicate with him. And it's a very primitive kind of story where they need to try to survive in this environment that she has stumbled upon, and he immediately obviously is captivated by her and wants to mate with her. But what just didn't work for me in this story is that in the end they still couldn't communicate well with each other, and it kind of became, I couldn't suspend my disbelief for that. So yeah, that was the thing that bothered me the most. I love a language barrier, but I love when people work their hardest to overcome that. So yeah, I was kind of disappointed by it because I really expected this epic romance, which in the end it was, but at the same time this kind of bothered me throughout the whole plot, so I just couldn't let that one go, and it really bothered me, so I couldn't give it 4 or 5 stars. Going back to the positive notes in this video, we're going to talk about my biggest surprises of this year so far. I have to say that probably my biggest surprise was a book, which is called Finding Gene Kelly by Tori Jean. This book was a bit of a revelation for me because, like I mentioned before, I have been missing romantic books, like really to see romance on page within stories with either whether it's grand gestures or just caretaking or some kind of pining, longing, really a lot of thought, and like not the type of obsessiveness that you see in like mafia romances or the type of obsessiveness that you have with alpha heroes, but really thoughtful thoughts between 2 characters. And this book embodies exactly that. We have a childhood friends to enemies to friends again to lovers situation. We've got a heroine who is dealing with endometriosis, so there's great representation for this chronic illness. We've got a hero who he's very much a pining hero. He's very much someone who has dealt with something in his past that has created a rift between the 2 of them, and he hasn't been forthright about it with her, which is why she hates his guts at the start of the story. And we have a setting in Paris, which I absolutely love. And we have a setting where we've got recreations of scenes of movies with Gene Kelly, which I absolutely love as well. We've got a foodie romance as well, so there's a lot of tropes that I absolutely love and appreciate within books, and this is a definite 5-star read for me. If I have to put it somewhere in my like top reads of the year, it's definitely after the first 2 that I mentioned. So after Right Move and Off Balance, we've got Finding Gene Kelly, because this one is very memorable for me and one that I can vouch that it's an amazing read, because there's caretaking in it as well. There's just a lot of romance in it, so I really loved it. Another surprise for me is the fantasy series by Carissa Broadbent, which is The War of Lost Hearts. Carissa Broadbent really blew up this year with her fantasy series like The Serpent and the Wing of Night, I think one of her other books is called. That one was really widely popular, but this series is the one that I decided to pick up because I had it available to me on audio, and I really loved it. We've got an amazing heroine, we've got an amazing relationship between herself and the hero, very gradual relationship, and very much a plot that centers on something, I don't know how to call it, like believable, even though it's a fantasy series. It's really like kind of the very classic situation of good wanting to overcome evil, which I really appreciated in this story. And I just flew through the 3 books that I had available to me in this series, and I think it's one of the best series that I've read this year, specifically because I haven't read very many fantasy books this year, but this one really got me into wanting to pick up more, which I love. So this one was a surprise for me as well. And I think that this is about it when it comes to surprises. I did have a couple of others that are really not romance books, but I think I'm going to leave those for the end of the year to mention as surprises, so you can see which one really took me by surprise when it comes to other kind of genres, non-fiction or thriller, mystery kind of books. But when it comes to romance, those 2 really seal the deal for me. For the next question, I'm just going to be short because I'm going to repeat authors that are I already mentioned. So new favorite authors, debut or new to you: Liz Stamford, because I read Mile High and The Right Move, and I love both of those books, and Carissa Broadbent. I just mentioned that this series that I read by her was really one that took me by surprise, and I definitely want to pick up her other series as well. So yeah, definitely these 2. Newest fictional crush is the next question. So obviously Ryan Shea from The Right Move. This guy, I think, is like the favorite book husband of almost any woman in this world. But I also have to mention that the hero from Finding Gene Kelly, Liam Kelly, he just did it for me. Sometimes a guy doesn't have to be like buff and athletic and like an alpha or whatever to be desirable, and I think that we need to promote more of these kinds of heroes, like I think Crystal calls them the alpha mellow heroes, where they do have a bit of an alpha in them, but they're actually very gooey on the inside, like very cinnamon rolly and very much considerate and compassionate, and yeah, just amazing sweethearts, you know. So Liam Kelly, definitely. And also, when I think about like the romance that I've been missing, Mr. Romance himself, Max Riley, the kind of hero that he is, even though he's doing like a profession of being an escort and making all of his clients' dreams come true when it comes to dates, this is the kind of amazing thought that I would want a guy to have, you know, to fall in love with a woman and then want to show her all the kinds of fantasies and scenarios that he can think of and then reenact them with her. I would love that in real life. So yeah, he's definitely another fictional crush that I have. Newest favorite character. This one, so I'm not going to mention any more men. I'm going to talk about the women. They're going to be the ones in the Liz Stamford books. So Stevie from Mile High and Indy from The Right Move. I do have to say that I kind of have slightly a preference for Stevie from Mile High because she's an amazing heroine. She's curvy. She's very opinionated. She is very much a strong woman with a very strong will, and someone who, even though has insecurities in her life, really works through those as best as she can. And she's also the type of person who loves animals. She volunteers at this animal shelter that I absolutely loved. We also have Indy from the second book. She has gone through a nasty breakup, and even though her heart is crushed, she remains the positive light within her immediate environment, like within the social group that she has. Everyone loves her, and with good reason. So those 2 ladies are definitely favorites of mine. I wouldn't mind going out with them, hanging out with them if they were real. So yeah, those two ladies for sure. A book that made me cry is the next one, and I have to say that I'm a very big crybaby. I typically cry a lot when it comes to books, and it's very peculiar that even though I've read 130 books this year so far, I haven't cried a lot. So that's really weird, I have to say. But if I think about books that made me cry, I have to go with the Off Balance series by Lucia Franco, because it's a 5-book series and you get so invested with the characters, and there's a lot of toxicity going on. There's a lot of hardship and medical stuff that goes on that kind of breaks your heart, and I definitely shed some tears when I read those books. So I was very impacted, and when I finished those books I was not well. I also got teared up when I read a book that was really impactful. It wasn't a romance. The book is called The Gravity of Missing Things by Marisa Ergo. It centers on a teenage girl whose mother is a pilot, and her mother goes missing. Actually, the plane that she is in goes missing, and she is the one who is very much advocating for the search to continue and for her mother to be found. And I really got choked up during that book because of certain scenes that were really hard to read. So yeah, those are definitely two plots that made me choke up. The next question is, which books made you happy? So obviously all of the ones that I mentioned above that I really enjoyed and loved and were surprises to me. But I do want to mention one audio play. Actually, it's not an audio book specifically, but really a full cast audio play by Erin Mallon. The book is called Skin Hungry. I laughed out loud so many times during this audio performance. I think it's really short, about an hour and a half or so, or 2 hours. But it was just so much fun that I really laughed out loud at many moments. So I definitely recommend you picking up if you have access to it on audiobook form, because it's just so much fun. Another book that really made me happy is The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. So Christina Lauren's books are very much hit or miss for me, and the past couple of books that I read by them did not work for me. I did love The Soulmate Equation, and I was having very high hopes for The True Love Experiment because it's a follow-up to that first one, and I really loved it. I had so much fun with it. I laughed out loud with it. I swooned with the characters as well. So it was a book that really, really made me happy. The next question is the most beautiful book that you purchased or received. So I don't typically buy a lot of books physically. I really need to have loved a book very much, or it needs to be by a favorite author of mine that I'm going to purchase it. I don't have a very big library or a place for a library at the moment in my home, so I'm really mindful of which books I purchase. I really want to have books that I want to own physically. But I did receive a very beautiful fantasy book. It's this one. It's by Cassandra Clare. It's Lady Midnight. It's, I think, the first book within a new series by this author. It's really pretty with the gold foilings with this woman that is on the front. And I have to think about, yeah, I think that also all of the Kennedy Ryan books, so Real, Grip, and Before I Let Go, are books that I absolutely love the covers of. So I love that I purchased those as well. So yeah, like I mentioned, I'm also not the type of person who will want to have like special editions or anything like that, because I simply don't have the space for it. So I'm not very much triggered to purchase those kinds of books. But obviously I do appreciate when you have like a beautiful little library that you can show off. So yeah, whenever I have opportunity, I will definitely branch out and have a bigger space for my library. The last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Obviously, I mentioned the ones that are going to be new releases and ones that have recently released but I haven't picked up yet. So those are I definitely still need to read. But when I think about other books that I definitely want to read, we've got Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I actually purchased the physical copy of it, but I purchased it when I was in Amsterdam, so I still need to get it here to my home, and I'm going to read that one. And then we've got Julie Ann's books, the recent releases. We've got Before Us and What Lovers Do. So those are definitely books that I still want to get to by the end of the year. Specifically also because Julie Ann is going to be at Rare in Florence, where I hope to be able to visit. I got my tickets, but I still need to book flights and everything. So yeah, I definitely need to get to more books by authors who are going to be there. So we've got A.L. Jackson, who's going to be there. I haven't read anything by A.L. Jackson before, so I definitely want to get to more books by this author. We've got A. Zavarelli. We've got, yeah, Penelope Douglas is going to be there, but I've read most of their books. I still need to read like the spin-off to the Fall Away series, the Falls Boys. I don't remember anymore what that book is called, but I still need to read that one. There's just going to be some books that I definitely need to pick up because of that signing, but yeah, definitely my favorite ones, like my favorite authors, are the ones that I want to focus on. So Julie Ann, definitely. Ali Hazelwood, definitely, because she's going to be there as well. And Lucia Franco is going to be there, so I have read most of their books actually. She was supposed to have a new release. I'm not sure whether that one released just recently. I'm going to check that one out to see if it released so I can pick that one up. And yeah, I can't think of anything else at the moment, to be honest, but my TBR is just never ending. I feel like I'm always behind on reading books, so I've kind of also steered clear of BookTube in the past couple of weeks because I was also very busy. But when I start catching up on all the videos that I still need to watch, I believe I'm going to have even more books that I'm going to be adding on that I want to read. So fear not, the TBR will grow. And yeah, that is about all of the questions that I needed to answer for the mid-year freakout book tag. And I have had a lot of fun reading all of the books that I've read this year. I have a lot of videos coming up in the next couple of weeks that I still need to share with you, and I look forward to hopefully share them with you on time, because I've just had such a hectic schedule that I wasn't able to consistently post videos on the same days, which is normal, but I'm working on it, guys. I hope you bear with me while I kind of get a hang of things, and I really enjoy recording, editing, and posting, and I hope you enjoy this content as well. And I hope that the next part of the year will be just as successful or even more successful than the first part of the year, and I hope that I can give you even more recommendations in the next portion of the year. I hope to see you very soon in the next one. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care, and bye-bye.